Which is a really family story. Young guy.
Different than last time.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to this event. We're going to give it about another minute for everybody to get in and settle down. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. Just an administrative note. We have a clipboard with a sign-in sheet that's going to get passed around. If you'd like to sign and give us your email address, we'll put you on the mailing list for future events. Also, we have bathrooms the way that you came in, all the way back out. You can hit the bathrooms there. We have some water and goodies in the back, and we also wanted to point out emergency exits are over here. I feel like a flight attendant, I wish. And over here, and also in the back of the fellowship hall. I have to practice that. Yeah, in the event of some sort of an unforeseen issue, we'll give you instructions. Fortunately, there are two of us here that are actually trained to do that, so we will make sure that you get home safely. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. I can see that we're getting settled in now. Thank you very much again for coming. My name is Jeff Vick. I work on a grassroots organization called Defending Democracies. We're located here in Roanoke with your friends and neighbors, and also in Blacksburg. This is not a Unitarian Universalist organization. We have people from all faiths, from the community participating in this. We just like to use our venue because it's, well, it's convenient and it's comfortable. And you will find we'll be launching a website. Don't worry about writing it down. It's on our flyers in the back. We'll be launching that tomorrow, I believe. It'll be fully up and operating, and that'll be a place where you can go for more information on Defending Democracies. Like I said, we're a grassroots organization. We're nonpartisan, but we believe in making sure that citizens have the right information. When I say right, I know that's very subjective. But you've got objective information with which to make your decisions and vote your conscience. We're less worried about how you vote, just that you have facts, that you know where to go to get those facts, and that you and your kin are not misled by misinformation, disinformation, and AI. Now, we're really concerned at Defending Democracies about the tendency for governments these days to be heading in the direction of a more authoritarian mode of operation. That means taking some of the power out of our hands and centralizing it. And to that end, we're letting people understand about that. Our past events have talked about Project 2025. We're doing democracy circles, which are events where we sit in a circle and discuss current events that are of concern. And it doesn't matter to us if those threats or those attempts at undermining our democracy come from the right or the left. We're still going to focus on them, and we're still going to let people know some views so that they can do something about it in the electoral process. We value the rule of law in this country, and we want to continue to sustain it. Now, as we've talked about Project 2025, which is the Heritage Foundation's view of what America should look like, we see items of concern of influence from the people that support the Heritage Foundation to head the country into a vision that's more white, evangelical, and also more totalitarian and less democratic. It would seek to disempower the rights of many minority groups. And by minority groups, I'm not just talking about people of color, but of course I am talking about women, our favorite people, right? We're talking about other groups of people who don't maybe believe the same way that white Christian nationalists believe. It is important that we have a plurality of beliefs in this country. It's what we were founded on, it's where we've come from, and we seek to maintain that. One of the ways that the folks who are behind the Heritage Foundation's report seek to take us back to 1920, that they seem to be heading us back to, in terms of no votes for some people and reproductive rights issues and so on and so forth, is by misinformation, disinformation, and the use of artificial intelligence to push their narratives. So we've invited our friends from Verba AI, Jeremy Swack and Arash Vij, to come down and talk to us about that. These two gentlemen, I'm going to let them talk about their own backgrounds so that I don't embarrass them. They just had 2 presentations at Roanoke College, pretty well attended by our core demographic, which is 18 to 30-year-old people who are still figuring it out. And what we're aiming for here is to give you some tools of how to tell something that's been ginned up to be disinformation, which implies intentional misinformation, and things that are just errors and misunderstandings, misinformation. But in any case, I'm gonna step aside and let the experts handle this. So, gentlemen, if you wouldn't mind stepping up here, it's Arash Vij and Jeremy Swag from Verba AI.
Thank you so much, Jeff. It's been a pleasure to come down here. As we'll get to in a little bit. Is the mic picking this up then? All right, great, thank you. This is really a critical topic, disinformation. It's only poised to get worse. So we really appreciate the opportunity to speak to an interested audience. My name's Arash Vij.
I'm Jeremy Swack.
And we'll go ahead and get started. All right. We're going to start the presentation with 3 headlines from the past year. And we'll explain, kind of why we're here and why this is such an important topic right now. So this first headline is from earlier this year. Latest Vanderbilt Unity Index shows the U.S. continuing its trend towards increased political polarization. The second one is foreign adversaries are targeting the 2024 election. Microsoft's recent report reveals large-scale efforts by Iran, Russia, and China to divide the nation and corrode public trust in democracy. And finally, as you'll see on this slide, with several examples on the right, all synthetically generated, as much as 90% of online content may be synthetically generated by 2026. Yeah. What we're seeing right now is what Jeremy and I call the perfect storm. In 2024, we're facing rampant domestic political polarization. We have foreign adversaries who are trying to draw upon that and run malign influence campaigns to divide us farther apart. And we're seeing rapid breakthroughs in generative AI, which are fundamentally changing what it means to see and believe things. All of this is happening right at the intersection of national, state, and local elections across the United States. And that's what brings us here today. Now, for the past 4 years, Jeremy and I have led William & Mary Disinfo Lab. It's a research lab at William & Mary, Williamsburg, Virginia, where we research the influence of social media, generative AI, and foreign malign influence campaigns on what we see online and societal impacts. After several years leading this lab, Jeremy and I started Verba AI because we realized researching this problem isn't enough. We want to be part of the solution to it. At Verba AI, we have 2 main priorities. The first is developing software to help combat mis and disinformation, and the second is to work with civic organizations and empower them with the tools that they need to do this urgent fight. Now, during today's presentation, there's 8 high-level topics that we hope to go over, ranging from what is mis and disinformation, to understanding the particularities of our current situation and what makes it so challenging to address, to finally, and it might be the most important thing, what all of us can do to help combat misleading narratives and attempts to sow further division in the country this election season.
All right. So starting off, I think it's important to just have kind of some a ground truth of some definitions of words that we've already said quite a few times, but just so we're all working in the same place. So first of all, what is mis and disinformation? So when it comes to disinformation versus misinformation, the key difference is intent. So with disinformation, it's information that is false and is disseminated intentionally to cause harm, while misinformation is information that is false and believed to be true by those disseminating it, but it differs because there's that lack of intent when it comes to spreading that piece of information. So when it comes to mis and disinformation, one isn't necessarily worse than the other, but it's important to know, these definitions so that when we're talking about mis and disinformation, we're being accurate in exactly what we're talking about. Next, a couple more definitions that I think are important. One is propaganda. This is one I think is a little bit more common. So the dissemination of information, facts, arguments, rumors, half-truths, or lies to influence public opinion. The classic example I give is like a Rosie the Riveter type campaign during the World War. I think it's kind of encapsulates that. And then lastly, the information environment. This one's a little bit newer, I think, when it comes to just public lexicon, but I think it's a very important definition to be aware of. So the information environment is the aggregate of individuals, organizations, and systems that collect, process, disseminate, or act on information. So really what this is just a fancy term for talking about all the different ways that information is disseminated in the world that we live in. So whether it be social media, the people in our homes, the local newspaper, all of that is part of the greater information environment. So when we're talking about the information environment, that's what we're talking about. So I think a question we see a lot is this phenomenon of mis and disinformation new? I think a lot of folks think, maybe it started in 2020 or 2016, that was kind of when mis and disinformation became a thing. But in reality, mis and disinformation has really been around since, you could argue, the dawn of written history, whether it be ancient Rome or, like I said, propaganda during the First World War. The idea of using information, mis or disinformation, to further a particular agenda is really a tale as old as time. So I think it's important to kind of couch the conversation when it comes to mis and disinformation, that this isn't necessarily a new phenomenon, but it is one where recent advances in technology have absolutely changed that. And with that, I'll pass it back over to Arsh.
All right, so as Jeremy explained, mis and disinformation isn't new, but technology has changed things in three big ways. First, when we look at mis and disinformation in the digital age, we see a fundamentally new way in how all of us consume information. Second, there's changes in how we're able to distribute or publish information to large swaths of people. And finally, and this is really brought on especially by generative AI, there's changes in how we're able to fabricate or generate compelling information. And we'll go into each of these in depth. Let's start with the impacts of consuming information in the digital age. Several decades ago, the news cycle was largely dominated by 3 channels on cable TV. It was, you watch the news at night, you have generally high vetting and high quality control of the content that's being distributed and broadcasted to the public. That's no longer the world that we live in. We have multiple media outlets, both more fringe and more mainstream, and every one of them offers 24/7 news coverage. What that means is that there's always content online. There's always reporting or analysis or op-eds coming out about any topic in the world at any moment. And it's not just limited to newspapers or news outlets that are having some degree of vetting. There may also be social media posts or Facebook posts and blogs that are also offering sources of content. The second thing is personalized feeds. It's now easier than ever to consume information about any given topic, but this also creates an issue where we tend to self-select information or news sources that already reify what we already believe. So instead of being exposed to alternative opinions or different worldviews, we're looking for content that already reifies what we believe. And this can cause devastating effects. It can lead to echo chambers, it can lead to increased political polarization, and the list goes on. Third, and probably the most dramatic impact over the last 2 decades, is the role that social media algorithms have played in how we consume information. This warrants scientific research, so here's some of that from a neuroscience journal. So this article, Changing the Incentive Structure of Social Media Platforms to Halt the Spread of Misinformation, actually uses neuroscience to understand how social media impacts how we engage with each other and information in general online. What this study finds is that social media has gamified online interactions, where when you're interacting with somebody on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or Reddit, oftentimes you're not really engaging in good faith conversation. You're not trying to convey your ideas or persuade. You are subconsciously trying to win the game of who gets the most likes, who gets the most views, who gets the most shares. And whether we're cognizant of that or not, this is the fundamental operating model that keeps social media platforms in business. So, what you have is a two-pronged issue. On the one side, we as consumers have psychological biases that mean when we're engaging with others online, we're oftentimes not doing so in good faith. And then on the other side, you have social media platforms that tailor their algorithms to exploit this fact and ensure that the content that we use, or the forms of communication we have with each other, are as contentious as possible, or as reifying as possible, because they just want clicks and engagement. And all those things are a disaster when it comes to consuming reliable information and building community online. The second fundamental change comes in terms of distribution, or the publishing of information. With the creation of the internet, it's now easier for folks to share reporting or evidence or anything they may want to online. Now, this definitely has value. If you want to attend a protest and upload firsthand footage of your experience onto a platform like YouTube, it's absolutely a win for civilian journalism. At the same time, you are not under the current internet facing the same kind of vetting or quality control that news outlets of the past had. The second factor is social media, and this goes back to what I was saying earlier about how social media algorithms operate. Research suggests that mis and disinformation online is actually picked up and distributed 6 times faster than authentic information online. And that again is because contentious rage bait is going to get more clicks, engagement, and drive more users to the platform. So these platforms are promoting that content farther. Third, and this is really a more recent phenomenon, is just the creation of social media influencers. Where on platforms like TikTok or Instagram, people who may become very famous and well followed for one particular niche are suddenly treated as authoritative voices on politics or policy issues. Now, I want to be clear, this isn't to say that you need to have a long list of credentials to talk about a topic, but it is to say not all of the sources of authoritative information we're getting today online, especially young people, are reaching the same levels of quality control as news reporting from the past. Now there's one more study survey here that I want to flag, which really speaks to the kind of generational divide that's going on in the country right now. Here's a study from Pew back in September 2023. More Americans are getting news on TikTok, bucking the trend seen on most other social media sites. When you go into the details of this report, they found that amongst people ages 18 to 29, folks, me and Jeremy's age, 1 in 3 people in this age demographic use TikTok as one of their #1 sources of news online. So even if this isn't something that's necessarily widespread across the board, it is something that Gen Z, Gen Alpha, and future generations are increasingly using. And it's why we need to be cognizant of these other factors that are negatively influencing what we see online. Now the third impact of disinformation in the digital age, it just boils down to how we're able to fabricate and publish information. So I'm sure that Back in 2016, we all heard about the Russian troll farms that were sowing division online. Let's go back to what a troll farm is. It's a group of people who oftentimes have hundreds of phones, or at the very least, hundreds of social media accounts. They'll sit in a room together and they engage. They act as if they're authentic users on a platform. They spread conspiracy theories, they promote echo chambers, they try to sow division amongst the American public. And this is something that Russia was found to be doing in 2016, and per this 2022 report, is continuing to do. But at the end of the day, there was limitations to what Russian troll farms were able to do, because it all relied on human beings operating these influence campaigns. Unfortunately, in the age of generative AI, that's no longer the case. Generative AI has enabled the creation automatically of realistic text, images, and video, and also the creation of AI-powered bots or fake accounts which are able to compellingly engage with users and act as if they're real. This leads to disastrous news stories like this next one from February of this year. Social media users struggle to identify AI bots during political discourse. Those Russian troll farms back in the day needed to have about a dozen employees who were operating hundreds of accounts. Now a single programmer can code 1 million bots to all operate concurrently and in a more engaging fashion thanks to generative AI.
So, building off what Arj was talking about, why is this such a hard problem to fix? So, there are a few things here that I want to highlight. So one is this issue of competing perspectives. I think it's best to illustrate this with an example. So, role of government, private sector, and individuals. What does that look like? I think the social media example that Arj brought up is a really poignant example in this case. With social media companies, the thing that really matters to most of them is their bottom line. So if users are interacting more with highly polarized content or things that might not necessarily be true, it's in their best interest, because at the end of the day, their whole business model is based on new users, attracting users to spend more time on the site so they can sell advertisements, because that's the business model of how social media works, since it's a free service. But of course, individuals, hopefully, don't want to be just reading highly polarized mis and disinformation. And similarly, the United States government, more or less, also does not want the public to be reading tons of mis and disinformation. So the issue is you have these competing perspectives where social media, where lots of folks get their information, really just wants people to stay on the platform, and that creates these disincentives for public good when it comes to mis and disinformation. Second, as Arj talked about, the rapid spread of information. So along with social media, it's just much faster to get an article, get a social media post, get whatever opinion that you're looking for, much faster than it was previously. And third are these rapid tech breakthroughs. So as Arj was talking about, it's not just 12 people in a room typing up highly polarized content. It's now one person leveraging AI-generated text, images, audio, or even AI-generated video to deceive people at a much larger scale than was previously possible. So from that, I'm sure artificial intelligence sounds really scary, and I wouldn't blame you. But can technology help fix these things? It's myself and Arj's opinion that absolutely, technology can also be part of the answer. So, artificial intelligence is something me and Arj view as a tool in the toolbox. It's not necessarily a 100% perfect solution, but it can be used to combat this problem of mis and disinformation that's been exacerbated by artificial intelligence. So, while it's an obstacle that AI is never 100% correct, you're never going to 100% of the time be able to tell that something was fake text or a fake image, it can go a long way in helping solve this issue. Similarly, artificial intelligence can also help with existing research efforts. So Arj mentioned a number of studies. Being able to leverage artificial intelligence to increase the speed at which we're able to do this type of research is extremely important when we're moving in such a fast-paced information environment. And second, and this will lead into a few slides on something that Arj and I are actually developing ourselves, is AI detection software. So, you know, AI might be the weapon, but it can also be the tool as well. And let me show a particular example that I think really highlights this well. So behind me is a deepfake video of President Zelensky. Let me back up to talk about deepfakes. So a deepfake is essentially an edited image or video to make it seem like a person is either doing or saying something that they didn't actually did. So in this particular clip that was circulated by the Kremlin during the early days of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, what the Kremlin did is they created a video to make it look like President Zelensky was surrendering to Russia. This video was circulated to millions of Ukrainians to make it seem like something had happened that in reality had not happened at all. This video, like I said, shows President Zelensky surrendering, something we know did not happen. But the amazing thing about artificial intelligence is it can also be used as a tool. So this is a platform that Arj and I are developing called Frientify. And the idea behind Frientify is to leverage artificial intelligence to detect these kind of malicious AI-generated images, video, and audio. So in this video of President Zelensky, what we've been able to do is analyze the frames in that video and find frame by frame where those manipulations are. So rather than just give a single number and say, you know, here's this video, it's 85% fake, we try to be a little bit more transparent than that. So we give you a score frame by frame, and then I think most importantly, we tell you where in that video locally are the manipulations actually taking place. So in this particular video, most of it is actually authentic, but President Zelensky's face and voice were manipulated. And using artificial intelligence, we're able to detect that and then use that as a piece of information to inform people who might have been duped by this video. So while artificial intelligence, I understand the worries and the fear around it, it's also a humongous tool in being able to fight back against this type of mis and disinformation. So building off that, how do you spot misleading information? We're going to break it down modality by modality. So starting with text, which I think is, you know, they're all important, but I think it's important to start with text and kind of go from there. So when it comes to text that might be misleading or mis and disinformation, there's really three key points that we look at for seeing if this might be misleading information. So one, is it inciting or sensational? Two, does it lack citations or context? And three, and personally what I believe to be most important, is it impossible to corroborate? So when it comes to that, let me move on here. This is a somewhat humorous example. This is a tweet, a post off of Twitter, and this shows what Arj was talking about, an account that is being fully powered by artificial intelligence. So you can see the top tweet there where they're saying something not entirely true. Someone responds in a humorous way, telling this AI-powered bot to essentially ignore everything they've been told and instead write a nice poem. And because the account is not a real person, it just follows the directions. So, humorous example, but I think it's very illustrative in that, you know, should you maybe go around and ask every bot to write you a poem? Maybe not. However, I think taking that first tweet and saying, you know, this is certainly lacking citations, certainly a bit sensational. Can I corroborate this information anymore? If no, you know, you might be looking at something that's misleading. Second, moving on to images and video. This is a similar set of criteria, but also somewhat specific to the data itself. So looking at the criteria here, does it contain inconsistent details? Does it contain unrealistic textures? And we'll look at some specific examples of that. And third, can it be corroborated or not? That's really the most important. If you see something in one place, check to see if it's somewhere else. But let's take a look at a few examples. So going back to that video of President Zelensky, one of the big takeaways that is kind of a warning sign that this video might be fake is these deep fake videos, while they've gotten quite realistic, are still certainly not perfect. So you can see the deepfake videos being compared to an actual picture of President Zelensky, and you can tell with the one on the left, the one in the green shirt, the deepfake, there's just a certain shininess to the skin. It doesn't really have any wrinkles. It just doesn't look like a real person if you really look at it quite closely. So when it comes to trying to spot something you think might be AI generated, taking a close look and corroborating that information, saying, is that really what President Zelensky looks like, can go a long way in determining if you're looking at something that was done to intentionally mislead. Second, we have what I think is a fairly interesting example of something that I wouldn't describe as the power of generative AI, but the power of traditional tools, even like Photoshop, that may have been around for a while, but are still extremely powerful at shaping narratives. So in this particular instance, it's the photo I'm sure everyone's seen of the Trump assassination attempt. And what the malicious actor in this case has done is they have photoshopped all the faces in the image of the Secret Service members to make it look like they were smiling. And this was a part of a larger narrative that the Secret Service was in on this assassination attempt. It's been fact-checked many, many times, including by the Associated Press. This is another situation where you may not have those artifacts that are left by something that's AI generated, but you can still corroborate this information, whether it be looking up fact checks from reputable fact-checking organizations or other reliable sources. It can be a very useful way to corroborate that information. And then lastly, this is actually an AI-generated image I made myself a couple of days ago, just because I wanted to show how easy it is now with how available this technology is. And this kind of has a similar look to that Zelensky deepfake, where there's a certain shininess to the person. There's something a little bit off. And this is another case where just being aware of what these kind of images look like, I think goes a long way in being a more informed consumer of information. We're happy to talk more about deepfakes. I know this is a very new area in the information environment, so if you guys have any questions after the presentation, we're happy to answer them. Yeah, that being said, I will pass it back over to Arsh to talk about how to respond to misleading information.
Right, I think this is probably the most important segment of the presentation, which is, we're all going to encounter misleading information, maybe from a friend, family member, or someone online. And we ought to know what to do in responding to it. So really, it depends on your specific situation. And I know over here we say in person versus online. A better way to explain it may just be someone you know versus someone that you don't know. I want to preface by saying that we generally deserve to give folks the benefit of the doubt. I think that we have all, again, probably know someone who's gone down the mis or disinformation rabbit hole. And because someone has gone down that rabbit hole, it does not necessarily mean that they're a bad person or have ill intentions. It oftentimes just means that they're misinformed. And something that we really appreciate about organizations like DefendingDemocracies is they focus on community and the interpersonal relationships that we have with each other. The only way to prevent division amongst ourselves and really to bring folks back when they start to go down that rabbit hole is not to approach them with hostility, but to approach them in good faith, to engage with them, and to really try to help them understand your perspective, engage with them, understand their perspective, and at the end of the day, you just don't want people backed into a corner, because that's when those psychological biases come into play. So I would say is when you have someone that you know who might be going down that rabbit hole, talk to them, engage with them, ask them, acknowledge the tension or the heat that often comes alongside going down this rabbit hole, and say, I understand you're very upset about this. Can you tell me a little bit more about, how you came to that conclusion, or where did you read about this? Ultimately, there's going to be some point when you're engaging and asking questions where there's not going to be reliable evidence to point to justify a falsehood. But once that point comes, don't tell them, see, I told you so. Tell them, hey, let's both dig into this together and see what we come up with. This is a really important thing. It's that, the tactics that are being used with mis and disinformation to drive us apart, there's no way to combat those by continuing to engage in hostile actions and driving each other apart. People hate to be told that they're wrong, they hate to be told that you're right and they're wrong, and we need to acknowledge that when we're engaging. So engage in good faith, engage from a place of care, because that's ultimately what our country needs, community. The second thing is how it comes to engaging online and also with folks that you don't know. Now this is what I would say is a little bit more counterintuitive, and that's the fact that there's this phenomenon called the Streisand effect, which is where inadvertently adding a lot of attention to something can make it get picked up and distributed farther than it would if you just ignored it altogether. So I would say generally, if you come across some misleading information online, take a look and see, does it only have a couple of likes? If so, if you comment on it, you're going to bump it up in their social media algorithms. You're going to make sure that more and more people see it. And by just seeing it moving on, you're hurting those social media algorithms. You're preventing it from being picked up and spread to more and more people. The second thing I'd say is if you really, really want to do something about what you see, take that misleading narrative you've identified or social media post and send it over to a civic organization that you're involved with. This is actually a great segue into the next project that we want to talk about. And this is something that we've been pursuing for the last year with the League of Women Voters of Virginia, and more recently, the League of Women Voters of Illinois and of Utah. And that's this project called Election Facts Virginia. After conducting research for several years on the problems of mis and disinformation, the challenges in making people more informed and critical users, we came to the conclusion that there's one really, really big challenge when it comes to achieving better media literacy, and that's just the challenge of convenience. Folks today can go onto Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and have a one-stop shop for everything that they want. You'll see what your friends and family are up to, you'll get some kind of political coverage and news, and when everything is in one place for you, it can be, it's hard to want to fact check every piece of news that you've come across. And so we designed this platform with the League of Women Voters of Virginia, prioritizing first and foremost, how do we make fact checking and cross-checking news as easy as possible every step of the way. Now this first screenshot here is of the fact check feed, and over here we're taking fact check reports from 4 nonpartisan organizations, which are PolitiFact, Fact Check, Lead Stories, and Snopes, thank you. And we're putting them all into one place. Over the last few months, there's been this narrative circulating that non-citizens are voting in elections. We've made it very easy to search across all these outlets for whatever misleading narrative it is, and you can see all these results right here. The second thing that we're working on is the rumor radar. And this again is a way that we want to help civic organizations like the OWV Virginia combat online narratives without necessarily contributing to the promotion of misleading tweets or TikToks and whatnot. So with the rumor radar, any member of the public is able to submit a piece of content that they would like to have fact checked, whether it's a tweet or a Facebook post or a news story. And then we work with the League of Women Voters of Virginia to investigate it, identify whether it is authentic or misleading, and then provide a nonpartisan source so that you all can see exactly how we've come to that conclusion. So that's what the rumor radar feature is. And yeah, on this next slide, we have QR code for election facts, as well as the URL. It's right there at the bottom of the screen. So if you are interested, you're able to scan it. And again, so it features live news monitoring, article summaries, political fact checks, and that rumor radar or a sort of election misinfo tip line. So I'll keep this up, so if you're interested in checking it out, you're able to. It's free to the public. And that concludes our presentation, but thank you all so much.
your questions. If you're more comfortable asking from where you are, that's fine. If you'd like to come up and use the mics, that's okay too. Yes, ma'am.
Are you finding opportunities to make this presentation to young people?
The question was, are we taking opportunities to make this presentation available to young people?
I'm sure you would take
Yeah,
it if you had one.
We absolutely would. So earlier today, we had the pleasure of presenting at Roanoke College to a group of young people, both in Jeff's international politics class, as well as an event hosted by I believe the Public Affairs Office. Tomorrow, we're headed to Blacksburg to present at Virginia Tech. And then forthcoming, we're looking at a few opportunities at UVA and William and Mary.
But if you have ideas,
Tell
just-
someone at TAP that you were coming, how would they find it? What time would it
so you can write to them at info@verbaai.org, or you can send it to Defending Democracies, to where you've been getting these invitations from Bill Hackworth and also to me. But there's their email address. We can go straight to them. They're very responsive.
We try to be. Thank you.
How do you know it's coming from you?
Question. A thread that ran through the presentation that I picked up on was the value of some critical thinking when we're trying to separate fact from fiction. Has your research given you a sense for what percentage of the population in the United States is actually interested in doing critical thinking? Serious question.
Yeah, it's a fantastic question. And I would say this. I think that within many counties in the United States, the importance of media literacy is being picked up on and added to curriculum. I think the really serious shortcoming that we have seen is the convenience of social media platforms as this one-stop shop cuts through the credibility. We had that slide earlier that 1 in 3 folks aged 18 to 29 use TikTok as one of their top news sources. I can guarantee you, if you ask those people, do you think TikTok is reliable? They would not tell you yes. But it's so convenient to just have one platform to just endlessly scroll through that it cuts right in the face of any media literacy education they may have.
Next question. I'll repeat it.
It's right here. Catherine, can you?
Yeah.
With your AI-generated fakes that you're able to spot, how long does it take you to actually do the research on discovering? With the fake AI-generated people or whatever it is that you're looking at that you think is fake, and you're investigating it, how long does that take you to do in terms of technology?
Yeah, I mean, really great question. This is something that is very much rapidly evolving as the tech is changing. I'll look at this from, I think that there's two kind of approaches to look at this from. So one is the actual, how long did it take to develop the detection capabilities to actually be able to go out there and process these videos. That's something me and Harsh have been working on for a little over a year now. Still not perfect, but I think we really have something that is quite competitive and is able to do a lot of good when it comes to this type of content. And then there's the actual discovery piece of how do you find what manipulated content is out there. And this is something we're actively working on, but combining the ability to detect this type of content, but also being able to monitor what's happening on Twitter, what's happening on TikTok, what's happening on Instagram, to have this more proactive approach where we know what fakes are out there before people are even seeing them. But it's very much an ongoing piece of work that we're looking to take on. So.
Okay, this is a really trivial question, but I can't help it. How does the Streisand effect get its name? Why is it called the Streisand effect?
was the question? Could you repeat?
Oh, the question was I just wondered how the Streisand effect came to be called the Streisand.
How did the Streisand effect come to be called the Streisand effect? Anytime Barbara Streisand's name hits the media, it balloons. And it doesn't really matter what somebody says about her, positive or negative. There was a time whenever Barbara Streisand was put in a headline, boom, there was instant hits, and that propagated more articles about Barbara Streisand in the media. So that's the phenomenon.
So was that disinformation or misinformation?
The question was that disinformation or misinformation? It's a really good question and a serious one, because it could be used for disinformation. If you didn't like Barbara Streisand, you could publish something negative about her, and you could count on it going viral.
Or if you worked for Barbara Streisand, you put something out there just to make it blow up.
All right, for those of you working for the Royal Family Public Affairs Office, take note of that gentleman back there, because he knows what he's doing. Yes, it has an effect. Yes.
I actually just read about this a couple of weeks ago. So actually, Barbara Streisand's attorney was trying to suppress a picture that was being posted about her house. And in his attempt to suppress it, more and more people wanted to post it. Okay, so that was the Streisand effect, that the more he tried to say, oh, this isn't right, take this down, don't, the more people shared it and it got out. So that's the Streisand.
Coming back here to the Royal Public Affairs. Yes, sir.
I really appreciate your presentation. But as I was sitting there watching you guys up there, I was thinking, do you ever feel like salmon swimming upstream? And secondly, are you collaborating with others to try to, push forward the work that you're doing on behalf of us all?
Yeah, I would say that in spring 2022, we were publishing our research on Kremlin disinformation in Eastern Europe. So this is shortly after the Russia-Ukraine war began, and the Kremlin in Poland, Hungary, and Estonia was sharing, loads and loads of misleading narratives that Zelensky deepfake and so on. And so at that point, things felt pretty bleak. And then 6 months later, ChatGPT was released, and everything got way worse. So it definitely feels like you're swimming upstream. And I think a lot of this just boils down to the market incentives. The amount of money that's being invested into things like generative AI tools outpaces severely investment into AI detection tools. In terms of collaborations, we're really leveraging our research background as well as the connections we've made through that research to try to get this technology into the hands of as many civic organizations as possible. But it is an uphill battle, for sure.
Excuse me, I was listening to NPR radio in my car, and the topic of the discussion was similar to what we are talking about today, but they used a third term called malinformation, and I don't remember the difference. Could you help me out?
Yeah, to be completely honest, so you should fact check me on this. The way that in our sector malinformation is usually used is just as a catch-all term for mis and disinformation. So it doesn't really discriminate based off of whether the bad information was intentional or not. We also see malinformation kind of used in the context of foreign malign influence campaigns. So if something's happening domestically, you might discriminate on whether it was mis or disinformation, whereas you kind of use a catch-all term for foreign influence campaigns, malinformation. Again, I think it's one of those newer terms that hasn't necessarily reached consensus in the information space yet.
Thank you. My name is Salim Ahmed, and I ask dumb questions. I'm piggybacking on the critical thinking question. Excellent presentation you had today. Do you have for audiences a PowerPoint which quizzes them about is this true or is this not true, and then you get a response, like a audience response system. Do you have anything like that?
This is actually a really great question. There are no dumb questions. I want to start there. But this isn't something we've explicitly put together. But it's as we were putting together this presentation, I was putting in those AI-generated images in the tweet. I was like, it'd be really fun to have something where something interactive where we could they put 4 images together and be like, oh, which one's real, which one's fake. I think it would be really powerful, especially seeing real next to fake and having to actually make that determination for yourself. Because that's actually what's happening on social media platforms and things of that nature where, there is no answer key. You don't know if something's real or fake immediately. You have to corroborate that information and figure it out for yourself. So not something we've explicitly done, but definitely something I think we should have in the works. So very good suggestion.
Thank you. How do you propose integrating what you're doing into the existing platforms and making it of value for them to pick it up?
Yeah, I can speak to that particularly on the deepfake detection angle. So I think platforms like Twitter, Facebook, etc., while they do want, the bottom line is the bottom line, their perception also does matter to them. If they're outed as a platform that is circulating tons of fake images and deepfake videos, that's very much, that's not good for their brand. And then they start to care. So I think when it comes to particularly the deepfake detection piece, being able to implement that so that employees at companies like Twitter and Facebook have access to the dashboard that we showed, where they're already doing content moderation, Twitter a little less so, because of Elon Musk, but they're still doing content moderation, and it does matter to them. So I think getting that kind of technology in their hands so they can continue to keep up with generative AI is something we're absolutely looking to do, and I think there's a common interest in it there as well. So.
Given that civil libertarians are really concerned about suppression of free speech by the government, is there any role of government or any independent organization to control disinformation?
This is a really good question, and I think it gets to the heart of what makes this challenging to solve. Jeremy talked about the competing perspectives, and I think one part of that conversation is depending on where you lie politically, you probably have very strong feelings as to whether the government should or should not be discerning what people are allowed to say online, whether some Silicon Valley CEO does or doesn't have that choice, and whether the responsibility is really just on the individual or not on the individual to come to that conclusion overall. We have, I think at the end of the day, the First Amendment is extremely powerful. I don't think that any attempts to kind of impede on that are necessarily going to, work out, nor that they necessarily should work out. But the kind of guiding principle that we have is everybody has a right to be as informed as possible online. So none of our research and none of our software will explicitly say, with the exception of things like climate change or COVID-19 that are, there's an abundance of evidence to prove that they're fake. We never seek to tell people like, this is 100% real or this is 100% fake, but rather to say, this is what the evidence suggests, and here's the evidence if you want to dig deeper into it and conduct further research.
Yet there are platforms like YouTube and others that restrict content you can upload. Could you ever invent a filter of such to filter your content and detect AI before it even gets on the platform? Because if you put the right AI up there, it'll explode before you even have a chance to take it down.
Yeah, and I think that this is definitely one of those long-term visions for a tool like Frientify. The kind of current status of this is when you have platforms like TikTok, for example, you're allowed to upload essentially any video with very few restrictions. But if you upload an AI-generated video, the onus is on the user to act in good faith and mark it as AI-generated. And TikTok can then use that for their filtering, for their algorithm, and so on. Of course, it's 100% voluntary. The vision for a tool like Frientify, when integrated into a social media platform, is to automate that process so that when content is uploaded, especially when content at scale is being uploaded to a really large platform, you can really quickly discern whether it's likely AI generated or authentic, and companies can then adjust that as needed.
I'm unfamiliar with TikTok. What kind of political information would someone pick up from looking at TikTok? Yeah, I'm gonna quickly ask them who owns TikTok. ByteDance. And where is ByteDance located?
China.
Beijing. It's People's Republic of China. But go ahead with the actual question. I just wanted to make that clear.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you prefaced the discussion with that, because it is important to have that information when talking about TikTok. I think when it comes to TikTok, at least when it comes to the content that is actually being posted on the platform, it's not too dissimilar from other social media platforms out there. In fact, TikTok has done so well for themselves that pretty much every social media company has essentially copied their format. So Instagram has a sub-platform called Reels, YouTube has a sub-platform called Shorts, and they're essentially the exact same thing, where it's an opportunity to post fairly short, usually 5 minutes or less content, and you can kind of just scroll infinitely. The platform will learn what you're interested in, and you can kind of just scroll and scroll and scroll. So similar to something like a YouTube, it's kind of anything you can imagine. There is definitely a particular tilt just because it is quite popular among that 18 to 29 demographic. But when it comes to thinking about TikTok in terms of what kind of content is on the platform, I think the best comparison is to something like a YouTube, where it's really up to the users, so that winds up being a little bit of everything. But it is important to also realize the geopolitical implications of what TikTok is and what ByteDance is. But I think also just important to have an understanding and a common ground of what that platform looks like. So.
When can I invest in your company?
We were talking about that earlier.
Yeah.
Cash and check.
Yeah.
No, ByteDance app for your phone.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, they founded this company, and permit me to use my own words here, but they saw a need, right? They saw that there's a problem, and they're using their skill set as computer scientists, and in Raj's case, computer science and international relations, to bridge that gap. And they are working towards products that can help with the polarity in our society. And you know, we will stay in touch with them, and we will certainly let you know as they progress. But they have they've worked a little bit with the Department of State, a little bit with the Department of Defense. We're hoping to increase that so that they become even more viable and grow, because this is a great utility that has so many uses for everybody in this country to help kind of bridge that, hey, what's this article all about gap, right? So, yeah.
What can we do to help them progress?
Well, I'm gonna stay away from that one.
I'm happy to take that on. I think that really there's two things that we're looking for. Number one is feedback on the tools that we've already developed. Like I said, Election Facts Virginia is 100% free, open to the public, and it's really testing our hypothesis, which is one of the reasons that people don't reliably fact check their news is just too tedious to go to 4 different fact checking websites when we have this endless barrage of information. Now that we've launched the platform, we need to see whether people are actually using it and whether that's solving a pain point for them. So I'd say that's the first thing, is just any feedback is always welcome. Again, because we're both software engineers, we're able to iterate very quickly on putting forth changes. I think the second thing is introductions to other people who might be able to help us out in refining the software offerings further. So anyone who might work in like public policy or in civic advocacy, or as Jeff mentioned, like Department of State or Department of Defense, those kinds of introductions really go far away in helping us make sure we're targeting real needs that real people have.
Did you put it up on TikTok?
Do not have a TikTok.
Do you use social media yourself?
Yeah.
Do you scroll TikTok, Instagram, anything?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I think, especially in crafting this software, like that's the realization that we had.
Yeah.
So we kind of showed you a few screenshots of Election Facts. Election Facts is a sub-tool for Verba AI. And with Verba AI, we're analyzing hundreds of news outlets from across the world and kind of aggregating their analysis. Because something that I realized while getting my international relations degree is all of the news that I read is 100% from US outlets. That's guaranteed to have some kind of tilt. And so we set out to build a software offering that, we got feedback from Foreign Service and DoD folks, but ultimately the question was, how can we have a more balanced approach to how we consume information? And I can say that Verba AI is now my #1 form of consuming information, because it's not, like, it's one thing to say, like, what's CNN saying, and Washington Post, and New York Times, and Fox, right? With Verba AI, you can see what 200 outlets are all saying about the same topic, and I think that's valuable.
I think also one of the things that they showed at Roanoke College is they can plot each article in terms of what their algorithm says about that article, how far it is to one side or the other, where it's from, and you can decide for yourself based on that kind of where that narrative sits among all the 80 articles. And you'll see, you can go to Verba AI, it's the easiest URL to remember, Verba, verbaai.org, and play with it. And look at the tabs, because they've really got it broken down nicely so that even somebody that's not as very technical like me, I can look at that and I can say, oh yeah, well, we looked at an article today in class that was moderately, what do we call it? Moderately negative 2 weeks ago, but now it's highly negative because the narrative and the articles written based on it changed over 2 weeks. So you can actually go back and see how that piece of information shifted because of other articles, that were posted based on that article. They've really done a great job with the aggregate data and being savvy about what, a lot of us don't read Al Jazeera. We should, because Al Jazeera is a first-rate publication, does external views of the United States, even though it's in Qatar, right? But they definitely hit Al Jazeera. They definitely hit the South China News. They definitely are hitting, papers that you normally will not see. Anything else? Okay, oh yeah, there we are.
So this is free. How do you live? I take it there are not ads on this thing.
No, there's not. The platform right now is 100% free. All of our work so far with civic organizations has been completely pro bono. Again, because it's an election year, it's the perfect storm right now. And this is what we spent the last 4 years doing free research for, at William & Mary has been for as well. long term, so I work a full-time job, I do this on the side. Jeremy just graduated. Long term, I think that we see, the ability to monetize the software for applications with maybe like Department of State, or, the DoD, but our work with civic organizations, we're aiming to, keep free for as long as possibly tenable.
Okay, they're gonna stick around a little bit if you'd like to chat with them in the fellowship hall. We've got some water, cookies, and, yeah, I'm sorry, I wish it was something a little stronger, but that's what we have. But thank you very much for your attendance. Tomorrow, you should be able to see our website, DefendingDemocracies.org. It's on our publications in the back, and you can start checking in with us regularly to see what events are coming up. And they're going to do this again in Blacksburg tomorrow night, so thank you for rehearsing them.
We'll see.
Yeah.